Good morning and welcome to our next video segment. This segment is called Motorcycle 1, the One and Only. In some ways it bears an eerie resemblance to a number of our prior episodes. Like the story of the Ambassador by Craig Rodsmith, it involves a customized creation that became a very famous work of art. Like Michael LaFontaine's Kawasaki W1R, it was assembled from parts that were never meant to be connected to each other. And like the story of the Bruff Superior and Lawrence of Arabia, it involves the tragic and untimely death of a well-known figure. But unlike any of those videos, this episode involves a piece of rolling art that does not roll. Simply as a reminder, the name of our museum is the Haas Moto Museum and Sculpture Gallery. The museum offers our guests the opportunity to view a diverse array of one-of-a-kind metal sculptures that echo the artistry of the motorcycles that stand nearby. In fact, when it came time to select a single image to announce this video series, I chose not a motorcycle, but a sculpture for that announcement. This is not a very complicated story. In fact, it's quite straightforward, with just a simple twist of the tail at the very end. A couple years ago, I came across images of this incredible sculpture by the famous artist Bruce Gray of Los Angeles. I was simply mesmerized by this mammoth sculpture, using the technique of joining random pieces of metal in the shape of an almost real motorcycle, creating the profile of a motorcycle out of huge industrial parts. So what did I do? I looked for the telephone number for Bruce Gray in Los Angeles. I found his website, had a telephone number. I called him up and introduced myself, and I told him we were building a motorcycle museum, and I very much wanted to discuss with him the possibility of acquiring motorcycle number 1. And I asked him if it had been sold yet. And Bruce said, not yet. And I said, well, why don't we get together? And he said, that would be great, but I'm in a little bit of a crowded calendar right now, so if we get together early in the week, that would be better. I said, fine, and Stacy and I made a date to go out to see Bruce in Los Angeles. The name of the piece was Motorcycle Number 1. So I asked Bruce before we ever headed to Los Angeles whether there was a motorcycle number 2 or a motorcycle number 3. And Bruce replied a little ominously in retrospect, no, this is one of a kind. It's the one and only, and there will never be another. The construction of this 800-pound piece is an incredible achievement. It boasts an actual BMW R75 engine. The 2 wheels are massive gears from railroad equipment. The seat is a coupling link for joining 2 railroad cars together. It has industrial springs for shocks. And the rest of this masterpiece is fashioned with oversized metal components. For any lover of motorcycles or sculpture, this is a phenomenal piece of work. This is where the tale gets a little bit strange in retrospect. On the way out to California, on the flight on the way out, I turned to Stacy and I said, you know, I had a strange dream last night. It was kind of a nightmare. I dreamt that Bruce had some form of cancer. And it just made the meeting a very difficult meeting. And I don't know where that dream came from. Maybe it came from his comment, there'll never be another motorcycle. So we got out to California, and I asked Bruce in his shop, why will there never be another life-size motorcycle sculpture? And Bruce said, well, it's just too hard and I'm just too ill. And he told us that he had just had a diagnosis of cancer. And in fact, he was supposed to begin the chemo treatments the day we arrived, but he pushed that back for a few days because he knew we were coming out to California. And I didn't say anything about the dream, but Stacy and I looked at each other. We were speechless. And it certainly affected our mindset, our feelings through the rest of the day, even though we were in this phenomenal shop with one great work of art after another. And speaking of that, we came across not only Motorcycle 1, which we were in love with before we ever saw it and more in love with after we saw it. I wanted to acquire one or two more pieces for my home. And there was a tricycle version of Motorcycle 1. In other words, it had that gear for the front wheel, but it was a tricycle and not a motorcycle. And I thought that'll look fantastic in my condo. Maybe even the dogs can take it for a ride, but it doesn't run very well. But then there was also this mammoth slice of Swiss cheese made out of lightweight aluminum. And I thought that was a beautiful piece. So we decided to buy both of those as well. And we shook hands on a deal to buy all three pieces. And we headed back to Dallas. And we did more research about Bruce on our way back, and Bruce was absolutely a world-renowned sculptor. He had pieces of sculpture on Hollywood movie sets and television shows and museums all over the world, in the homes of celebrities. And he was a very, very low-key, quiet guy. And we were just thrilled to have acquired these three pieces. In fact, he posted, I think it was an Instagram post afterwards, where he said this was both the best week of his life and the worst week of his life. It was the worst week because he had learned of the cancer diagnosis, but it was the best week of his life in some way because he had sold three pieces to this motorcycle museum in Dallas. And we stayed in touch with Bruce for a while. He was doing better at first, but then he passed away in the summer of 2019. And we went to his website after his death, and on his website he listed all of the different television shows, all of the museums, all of the movies, all of the celebrities where his artwork, his sculptures, his artwork had been acquired or appeared. And of the 22 museums that were listed as museums that had acquired his pieces, the Haas Moto Museum was listed first. And in an interview that was published right before his death, he was asked the question, which of your pieces that you've made in decades of being a famous sculptor, which of your pieces is your most cherished piece? And his answer was, my motorcycle sculpture, which now appears in the Haas Moto Museum in Dallas. The news of Bruce's death had a great impact on Stacy and me. We had only met Bruce that one time in his shop in Los Angeles, but his generous spirit and his creative genius was infectious. And his favorite sculpture, the one and only Motorcycle 1, deserves to be at the very front of the Haas Moto Museum when you first walk in the door.